The sound of the glass shattering didn't even stop them. It wasn't an accident. I dropped the wine glass on purpose. Right there, at the edge of the rented rooftop terrace where the party lights flickered and the city pulsed below us. People turned, heads tilted, but not them. Not my wife, and the man she swore was just a colleague. He still had both hands on her hips, guiding her through some ridiculous dance routine he said was from a team exercise. She still had that dreamy, far-off smile like she couldn't hear me calling her name. I picked up the jagged stem of the glass just to have something in my hand. My palms were sweating so bad it almost slipped out. No one asked if I was okay. No one even flinched when I stepped closer. I swear the music got louder just to drown me out. "Do you two need a room?" I croaked. My voice cracked like a kid's. Pathetic. That's when I realized I was trembling, not with rage, but humiliation. Because he didn't even look at me. He just laughed, whispered something into her ear, and spun her again. Like I was a ghost in my own marriage. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, not in sympathy, but in that sick, hungry way people watch reality TV, waiting for the meltdown. I should have left. I should have saved what little dignity I had. But instead I stood there, mouth dry, heart beating so hard I thought it might punch its way out of my chest. That's when the plan began to form. Not a loud, crazy plan. A quiet one. A deliberate one. The kind that makes people wish they'd never underestimated you. I smiled, or at least I think I did, and walked back inside without saying another word. Behind me, they kept dancing. In front of me, the kitchen was empty except for the untouched catering trays. And in the middle of it all, my phone was still buzzing on the counter, screen lighting up with a notification from an account they didn't even know existed. That's where my reminder would start. With that account. And by the time breakfast came, none of them would forget who I am ever again. The moment I closed the door behind me, their laughter muted into a distant hum. Like they were in another world, one I'd never belonged to in the first place. I stood there for a second in the kitchen, surrounded by untouched pastries and imported olives no one wanted. The same kind of overdone spread Liv used to mock when we were broke and honest, and still real. Now she was out there in a dress I couldn't afford, twirling under string lights, clinging to a man who knew exactly what he was doing. I didn't cry. Not yet. But my fingers were twitching the way they do when I'm about to spiral. I stared down at my phone, still buzzing from the draft I'd written 2 nights ago and never sent. It wasn't even meant for her. It was for him. I had started writing it at 3 a.m. after I found a second toothbrush in her gym bag. Blue. Not mine. Still wet. I never sent it because I was scared. Not of confrontation. I was used to being ignored. I was scared of confirming it. Of watching him read my message and reply with a shrug. Like I was just a speed bump in a story that never really included me. But now, that draft didn't feel like desperation. It felt like evidence. Not the legal kind. The real kind. The emotional kind. The kind that tells you it wasn't in your head. That the moment you feared most already happened, and no one even thought to warn you. I scrolled to the text, hovered over it. Then I deleted it. Not out of forgiveness. Out of strategy. He wasn't going to get a warning shot. I went over to the sink and poured myself a glass of water, forcing my hands to stop shaking. And that's when I heard it. Her voice, louder than it should have been. She was calling my name. Laughing. "Elliot, baby, where'd you go? Baby." She hadn't called me that in 6 months. She said it now in front of the others, like it made things normal. Like the way his hands had been on her waist moments ago was just office fun. Like she didn't see the way I watched her pretend. I stepped out slowly, water glass still in hand. Everyone turned to look. She was standing in the middle now, smiling too wide, eyes a little glazed. He was gone, disappeared like smoke. Maybe he'd gone to take a call. Or maybe he knew exactly what he'd done and didn't want to be around for the fallout. Either way, I didn't care. Not anymore. Liv walked up, kissed me on the cheek, and whispered, "Don't be weird, okay? It's just dancing." Just dancing. My skin crawled. So I smiled. Not because I forgave her, but because I knew something she didn't. That morning, while she was in the shower, I'd opened her laptop. I know, privacy. Boundaries. Trust. But that trust died long before I touched that trackpad. What I found wasn't even hidden. A shared Google Doc titled Mood Board 2025. But inside wasn't a mood board. It was a transcript. Snippets of flirty jokes. Inside references. Screenshots of texts. All from one sender. Him. Kellen. He had a nickname for her. She never told me. He called her Junebug. She told him things about me I never imagined she'd share with anyone. Weak things. Embarrassing things. How I once cried during a rerun of a kid's movie. How I always locked the car door twice because I thought one beep wasn't enough. How I flinch when I hear yelling. She made me into a character. Someone harmless. Someone small. Someone he could laugh at and touch right in front of. That's what I remembered when she kissed my cheek. That's what kept me standing still when she grabbed my hand and dragged me toward the dance floor like nothing had happened. I let her. And as the music started again, I looked around at the people pretending not to notice how hollow I looked, how shaky my smile had become. And I realized I didn't have to scream to be heard. I just had to let them talk. Because people like them? They always talk too much. And I was already recording. I didn't sleep that night. She passed out beside me like it was any other weekend, like we hadn't just lived through the worst public humiliation of my life. She didn't say a word when we got back to the room. Just pulled off her earrings, wiped off her lipstick in the mirror, and slid under the covers like we were fine. As if she didn't feel my silence pressing down on the mattress between us. As if I wasn't lying there wide awake, staring at the ceiling, fingers twitching against the sheet like I was playing piano keys only I could hear. At 3:14 a.m., I slipped out of bed and went outside. I didn't bother putting on shoes. The terrace was cold, the stone tile biting into my feet, but I needed the sting. I needed something to wake me up from the slow motion collapse my life had become. There were still glasses on the table from the party. Half a bottle of Merlot. Her lipstick on the rim. I sat down and stared at it, wondering when exactly she stopped loving me. Or worse, when she started pretending she still did. Then I heard the whisper. Not in my head. Out loud. Somewhere below. Voices. Laughing. The stairs from the terrace led down to a private spa area. Hot tub. Sauna. More company-funded nonsense I hadn't even looked at when we arrived. The lights were off down there, but I saw the faint glow of a phone screen. 2 silhouettes. Steam rising. One female laugh. One deep voice. I didn't move. I didn't want to see more. I just listened. I heard her say, "He never even notices anymore. I could be gone for hours." Then his voice. "You were gone for hours." Laughter. Splash. I felt it in my chest. Not like a knife. Knives are sharp. Clean. This was dull. Rotting. Like something was decaying inside me, and I had only just now smelled it. I didn't go down. I walked back inside, grabbed my phone, and pulled up the account I'd made 6 months earlier. At the time, I told myself it was just for backup, just in case something went wrong. But it was more than that. It was the part of me that knew I wasn't crazy, that knew I wasn't imagining it. The account had a few dozen photos, screenshots, GPS pings, bank transactions, voice memos. One clip of her FaceTiming someone while I was in the garage, caption with a name she never mentioned. Kellen's playlist skull. I tagged it 6 weeks ago. Never opened it again. Until now. I watched it. All of it. She was lying on our couch, wearing my hoodie, but not talking to me. She was twirling her hair, laughing into the camera, saying things like, "You should have seen his face when I told him I was working late. I don't think he suspects anything. He's so trusting." Trusting. Like that was an insult. She giggled and whispered. I could probably tell him I joined a cult and he'd still offer to drive me. That's what I meant to her. A driver. A placeholder. A joke. I stood in the hallway with my phone in one hand and my wedding ring in the other. I didn't even remember taking it off. I just felt the cold imprint on my finger. I wanted to scream. To punch something. But I didn't. I sat on the floor. And I started typing. Not a message. A post. I was done being quiet. Not revenge. Exposure. By sunrise, they'd remember me. Not as the husband. Not as the joke. As the one who finally decided to speak. I didn't post the story that morning. Not yet. Instead, I made pancakes. She walked into the kitchen around 7:40, hair still damp from the shower, robe loosely tied, looking like she hadn't betrayed me in a whisper just a few hours earlier. I could still smell chlorine in her hair. I imagined the hot tub bubbles around her and Kellen, their voices low, her eyes closed, maybe even her legs across his lap, while I sat upstairs with evidence and silence and stupid, hopeful loyalty in my chest. And yet, I handed her a plate and said, "Hope you're hungry." She blinked at me like I was glitching. "You made breakfast? Figured we could start fresh today? Get out of the weird vibe," I said, flipping another pancake onto mine. I even smiled. I don't know how it looked from the outside, but inside it felt like my face was cracking open. She stared for a second too long before sitting down. Ate slowly. Chewed like she was afraid there was glass in it. There wasn't. I hadn't poisoned her. That's not the kind of revenge I believe in. I wasn't going to lose my mind for her. I was going to make her see me again, not as the doormat, the dumb husband who stayed, but as the storm coming for everything they thought was safe. After breakfast, she asked if I wanted to go on the group hike. I said no. I said I had to catch up on emails for a project I was working on. She didn't ask what project. She never asked anymore. When she left, I waited 10 minutes. Then I grabbed her laptop from the suitcase. She never logged out of anything. She trusted I wouldn't look. This time I looked. I copied everything. All the messages. Her drafts. Notes she'd written to herself. Things about me. I read things no husband should ever read. I saw how she described me to others. How he's sweet but slow became the running joke between her and Kellen. How they bet on how long it would take me to notice if she didn't come home one night. How she said she felt like a nurse taking care of a patient who didn't know he was already dead. Dead. That was the word she used. That's what she thought I was. I loaded everything to a USB drive, then to a private server I had forgotten I even still paid for. I made folders, labeled them cleanly. No rage. No shouting. Just curation. I knew people would eventually find it. Co-workers, family, friends. I wanted them to see it. Not just the infidelity, but the cruelty. The way she reduced me. Mocked me. Buried me in real time. I created a new post in a relationship forum. A throwaway account. No names. No exact dates. Just the facts. A slow burn betrayal. The kind that starts with long hours and shared jokes, and ends with a hot tub, and a wife who doesn't flinch when another man's hands wrap around her waist. It was long. Emotional. Messy. Just like I was. But before I hit publish, I paused. I had one more step. I opened my camera roll, found a photo from last Christmas, the two of us in matching pajamas, holding mugs that said his and hers. She had just told me she was so lucky to have me. I believed her. I saved the photo, renamed it, Final Proof of Life, and attached it to the post. Then I pressed schedule. Not post. Schedule. The world wouldn't see it yet. But it was ready. Like a loaded trap hidden under leaves. And all it needed now was a trigger, which came far sooner than I expected. Because just before lunch, I got a text from an unknown number. Does he know yet? No name. No emoji. Just that one question. And it didn't come from Kellen. It came from someone else. Someone who shouldn't have known anything. And that's when I realized. This went far deeper than I ever imagined. I stared at the text for over a minute, like it might rearrange itself into something less terrifying if I gave it time. Does he know yet? No name. No punctuation quirks. Just clinical. I checked the number. Not saved. Unfamiliar area code. But it wasn't spam. It was intentional. It wasn't a wrong number, and it wasn't a guess. Someone knew. And not just about her and Kellen. They knew I didn't know. Or at least that I wasn't supposed to. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could have replied with, "Who is this?" Or, "What do you mean?" But I didn't want to tip my hand. Not yet. Instead, I screenshotted it, encrypted it, and dropped it into the digital vault I'd started building the night before. I didn't know what I was collecting anymore. Evidence, yes, but also something uglier. A record of the erosion. I was documenting the slow collapse of trust the way a scientist documents the spread of a virus. By the time Liv returned from the hike, I had already combed through her archived conversations, calendar invites, voice notes, and even her deleted cloud files. And that's when I found it. A video, 23 seconds long, taken 6 weeks ago. The thumbnail showed the inside of a conference room. Blinds half open. A long table. The edge of her sleeve. Her voice saying, "He still thinks I'm the best thing that ever happened to him." Then another voice, not Kellen. Another man. One I didn't recognize. Of course he does. That's what makes it fun. Laughter. End of video. It didn't sound like flirting. It sounded like sport. That's when it hit me like cold water. This wasn't a secret affair. This was a game. And not just with her coworker. More than one person was involved. They knew me. They laughed about me. I wasn't just the husband. I was the setup. A walking cliché in their private sitcom. She walked through the door, wind-chapped and glowing. I stood in the kitchen like I had all morning. Except this time, I wasn't trying to play the fool. I just wanted to see her face. To watch it move when she lied. "Hey," she said, peeling off her jacket. "Sorry I didn't wake you earlier. You look peaceful." Peaceful. I had dark circles under my eyes. My spine ached from sleeping on the edge of the bed. I hadn't felt peaceful in months. I nodded and asked how the hike was. She smiled like everything was fine and said, "Oh, it was great. Gorgeous views. Fresh air. Much needed." She was good. Scary good. You wouldn't know anything was wrong unless you were looking for the cracks. I wasn't just looking. I was measuring them. I asked her where Kellen was. Her answer was too fast. "Oh, he stayed behind with a migraine." I tilted my head. Weird. I thought I saw him walking down to the lake. She paused for half a second, then smiled again. "He probably felt better. You know him. Can't sit still." That was her tell. That unnecessary comment at the end. She always adds filler when she's improvising. I'd learned that over the years without even realizing I was cataloging it. We didn't talk for the next hour. She scrolled on her phone. I sat in the corner chair and watched the wind push pine trees against the window. I could hear water dripping in the bathroom sink. I started counting the seconds between drops just to keep my hands from shaking. Then my phone buzzed again. A new message. Same number. "You think it's just him?" "Oh, Elliot." No emoji. No punctuation. Just that same clinical cruelty. I looked at her, still sitting on the couch, screen reflecting off her eyes, completely unaware. Or maybe pretending to be unaware. I couldn't tell anymore where her mask ended and her real face began. This wasn't about love. This wasn't even about cheating. This was entertainment to them. And I wasn't going to be their character anymore. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and told her I was going for a walk. She nodded without looking up. Good. Let her stay relaxed. Because while she sipped tea and laughed at whatever was on her feed, I was walking into town. And I had one goal. To find out who sent that message. Because if this was a game to them, I was done playing my assigned role. The walk into town was only supposed to clear my head. Instead, it became something else entirely. The retreat was built on the edge of a sleepy tourist village. Antique stores with crooked signs, a single gas station, and a diner that smelled like burnt coffee and cinnamon. I pushed open the door, the little bell above it chiming, and slid into a corner booth where I could see the entire room. My heart was still hammering, but not from panic anymore. This was different. My thoughts were no longer a blur. They were lining up like soldiers waiting for orders. I ordered black coffee I didn't want and took out my phone. The mysterious number was still open in the message thread, glowing back at me like an open dare. I typed, "Who are you?" then deleted it. Typed, "What do you want?" Deleted again. I was done being reactive. If they had gone this far to mess with me, it meant they were overconfident, and overconfidence always leaks details. I needed to listen, not shout. So I opened a search tab, ran the number through a reverse lookup service I'd never used before. Nothing at first. Then a single hit. Prepaid SIM, registered 2 towns over, cash purchase. It didn't tell me who, but it told me enough to know someone local was involved. This wasn't random. The waitress refilled my cup. I nodded absently, pretending to be just another tired husband on a trip he didn't want to take. Meanwhile, my other phone, a cheap prepaid one I'd bought months ago for work emergencies, buzzed softly in my jacket. It was the same account I'd been using to store all the evidence. And there it was, a new email. Subject line, "You're not crazy." No sender name. Just that phrase. My fingers went cold. I opened it. Inside was a single attachment. No text. Just a photo. It was Liv. Taken from the night before. Not the hot tub. Not the terrace. The hallway. She was leaning against the doorframe, looking at Kellen like she used to look at me. And in the reflection of the hallway mirror, you could see someone else, holding a phone, taking the picture. Someone who wasn't me. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred. The silhouette was female. Not Liv. Not anyone I recognized. Which meant there was a third party here. Someone documenting all of this. Someone feeding me crumbs. But why? To warn me? To play me? To push me towards some reaction they could watch unfold? My skin prickled as the possibilities spun through my mind. I looked up from my coffee and caught my reflection in the diner window. I barely recognized myself. I looked like a man at a funeral. In a way, I was. But funerals end. This wasn't going to end until I decided it would. On the walk back up the hill, the retreat looked different. The string lights that had seemed so pretty the first night now looked like a net, each bulb a point in a trap. People milled about in their branded fleece jackets, laughing and sipping craft sodas. I could hear Liv's voice somewhere near the patio. My chest tightened, but my steps didn't falter. If she saw me now, she wouldn't know what I was carrying back with me. She wouldn't know that while she was drinking and laughing, I had been sitting in a diner opening a file that would change everything. By the time I reached our room, my plan had shifted. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I wasn't going to confront Kellen either. They were actors on a stage they thought they built themselves. But behind the stage, someone was handing me the script. And if they thought I was going to stick to my assigned lines, they were about to be very disappointed. I plugged the USB drive into my laptop, copied everything one more time, and uploaded it to 3 separate cloud accounts with different names. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened a blank page and started writing in my own words. Not a draft, not a text, not a scheduled post. A confession, a record, my version of the story before anyone else tried to twist it. My fingers moved faster and faster as I wrote out every detail. The glass at the party, the hot tub voices, the text messages, the email, the photo. I didn't edit. I didn't soften. I didn't spare myself either. By the time I stopped, I had 12 pages. I read the last line out loud under my breath. They forgot who I am. They won't forget much longer. Outside the window, I could see Liv crossing the courtyard, phone pressed to her ear, smiling that smile she thinks I don't notice. She waved absently toward our window, like she was checking if I was still there. I raised my coffee mug toward her like a toast. Because now, finally, I wasn't just documenting. I was preparing. And whatever came next wasn't going to be quiet anymore. I waited until just after midnight. It was the last night of the retreat, and most of them were already half drunk on complimentary wine, collapsed into their little clusters of giggles and gossip. I watched them from our window like I was viewing a wildlife documentary. Liv sat at the fire pit, curled under a branded fleece blanket, laughing so hard her shoulders bounced. Kellen sat beside her, not touching her now, but looking like he wanted to. His eyes lingered on her mouth a second too long. It didn't matter. I had everything I needed. I left the lights off in our room. The only glow came from my screen, and the folder I'd spent the entire afternoon curating. I'd renamed it. What You Missed. Inside, the screenshots, the chat logs, the time-stamped GPS pings from when she said she was working late, the photo from the hallway, the voice recording I'd enhanced to isolate Kellen's low chuckle when he said, "That's what makes it fun." And one more thing, a screen capture of her browsing an article titled, "How to Gaslight Your Partner Without Getting Caught." I attached everything into a zip folder, then uploaded it to a private, view-only link. I made it simple. One link, one line of text above it. This is what you laughed at. This is what you helped protect. I hope it was worth it. And then I posted it. Not on Reddit. Not on a blog. On the retreat's internal Slack channel. Yes, they had one. A cheerful, corporate little space filled with inside jokes and fun challenges and photos from the hike. Someone had left it open on the shared retreat tablet in the lounge earlier that day. I watched as they uploaded a group selfie with the caption, "Strong team, stronger bond flexed biceps, #workfamily." That's where I put the link, right underneath the photo. I hit send and left the device on the table. Then I walked outside into the cold mountain air and waited. It took 6 minutes. The first person to notice was a woman named Jenna, one of Liv's teammates. I saw her lift her phone, squint, freeze, then slowly lower it like she was afraid it might burn her hand. A few others started checking their phones. Silence spread like a virus. Conversations trailed off mid-sentence. Blank stares replaced laughter. Someone dropped a wine glass. Shattered. No one moved to clean it. Liv didn't check hers at first. She was too busy talking. But then someone nudged her. She frowned, pulled out her phone, read, and read, and kept reading. I've never seen a face change so slowly. Like the blood didn't know where to go. Like her whole body was trying to reject what her eyes were taking in. She looked up toward our window. I didn't move. I stood by the tree line, just far enough to watch, just close enough to see every twitch of panic that started to bloom across her expression. She whispered something to Kellen. He took out his phone, read, stared, and then looked around, like he expected me to come charging out with fists raised and veins bulging. I didn't. I stepped into the light slowly, calm, hands in my pockets. The pathetic husband, the joke, the ghost, the dead man walking, whatever they'd called me behind closed doors. Liv stood up, her mouth open like she was about to speak, but I beat her to it. "Don't," I said quietly. "Just don't." The silence that followed was heavy. And then Jenna asked the question no one else dared. "Is it real?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She knew. They all did. I turned and walked away. Back up the hill. Back toward the room we were supposed to share. She didn't follow. She never would have expected I had the nerve. But the thing is, I didn't find the nerve. They built it. Every joke, every text, every lie, every team bonding moment where I was the punchline they didn't think could hear. They made me this. And now? Now they had to live with me. The next morning was quiet. Too quiet. The retreat's usual artificial cheer, the overplanned breakfasts, the motivational playlists, the forced laughter by the espresso machine. All of it had collapsed into an eerie, awkward silence. No one made eye contact. No one asked about hikes or yoga sessions. The group chat had gone completely dark. Not a single good morning. I was already packed. Liv hadn't come back to the room. She'd slept somewhere else, maybe with one of the organizers, maybe in a panic hotel room down the hill. I didn't care. I didn't text. I didn't call. There was nothing left to say. Everything I needed to say, I had already typed and scheduled and shared. By the time I stepped out of the cabin, my car was the only one warming up in the gravel lot. I tossed my bag in the back, rolled down the window, and just sat there for a moment with the engine running, watching the morning fog melt off the grass. It felt clean, like the start of something, not the end, which surprised me. For so long, I thought I needed answers. An apology, an explanation, some confession that would tie the story in a neat bow. But now, I didn't need anything from her, or from him, or from any of them. I had me again. Just before pulling out, I saw Jenna jogging toward the car. She looked nervous, like someone who wasn't sure if she was walking into a trap. She began, hands shaking slightly. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For laughing. For not saying something. For seeing it happen and pretending I didn't. I looked at her for a long second. You weren't the only one, I said. I know. She nodded, tears forming. But you were the only one who did something. I didn't know what to say to that. So I just nodded. And she stepped back, letting me leave. The road twisted down the mountain in long, quiet curves. The kind of drive that should have made me feel alone. But I didn't. For the first time in what felt like years, I wasn't carrying the weight of someone else's lies. I wasn't checking her texts. I wasn't wondering who was behind a smile or a late night. I was just driving. I stopped once, at a diner 3 towns away. Same kind of greasy place, but different energy. Calmer. There was a little chalkboard sign that said, "You're not lost. You're just in between." I smiled at that. I took a booth by the window, ordered blueberry pancakes, and opened my laptop. The post I'd written, my confession, my story, had already gone viral in that forum. Thousands of comments. Messages from people who said it gave them the courage to walk away, to speak up, to stop making themselves smaller to be loved. I didn't post any follow-ups. I didn't need to. It was out there now. And that was enough. As I finished my coffee, I pulled my wedding ring from my coat pocket and laid it on the table. Not with bitterness. Not with rage. With peace. It didn't represent failure anymore. It represented survival. I left it there, right next to the check. And I walked out into the morning sun, head high, spine straight, finally remembered. Not by them. By me.